back to the stream. Today, I'm still on a Halloween type of vibe today. The last stream I had to delete was a bit scary, but Halloween is the gory as fuck. So, this is not something what might be gory, might not be, hopefully not bad. So, YouTube does not strike mine. Um, yeah, I was trying to be really fun while watching this. No one's gonna be then unless it's pro. I'm a bit worried for this though. So if someone comes in chat, I'll try to read chat. Yo, but we're gonna watch the most disturbing Disney.
Disturbing crimes that happen at Disneyland. And as the video goes on, things go from bad
Let's
to
go.
horrendous. On May 31st, 2025, a video surfaced on the internet showing a violent brawl between some visitors at Disneyland. Although the video ended with an adult woman almost naked as a result of the fight, it all started with a family of three, which we will call the Lees, and a couple who we will call Ming and Lan, for the man and the woman, respectively. According to reports, they were all in line for the ride known as Crazy Animal City at Disneyland, Shanghai, China. When Ming and Lan decided to take a photo together, the Lees then tried to move ahead, but obstructed Ming and Lan in the process. And this led to an exchange that went from subtle to heated, and within seconds, the conversation then went from heated to a physical confrontation. Before anyone knew what was going on, Ming, who was wearing a black t-shirt in the video, had already grabbed Mr. Lee, who was wearing a white t-shirt. And when the men wrestled each other, Lan joined in on the fight by yelling and pointing at Mrs. Lee, who was holding her daughter at the time. But before Mrs. Lee could make any moves, Lan decided to join Ming in hitting Mr. Lee. And this made Mrs. Lee move closer to the fight, trying to separate all three of them while still holding her daughter. Now soon Lan turned to Mrs. Lee, and in annoyance struck her daughter in the face. This caused Mrs. Lee to break down into tears and crouch on the ground. And as she cried, Lan went back to the two men to join in on the ongoing scuffle and helped to wrestle Mr. Lee to the ground. And as soon as Mrs. Lee saw her husband hit the ground, she pulled herself together, moved closer to the brawl, and reached out her arm to her husband to help him get up. Now at the time, the fight had already attracted a large audience who watched in shock, with some of them making an effort to end the fight, but all of their attempts to end the brawl ended in vain, until the security personnel who worked at the park arrived at the scene to put an end to it all. Now at the end of everything, no one was actually critically injured, and so no one was actually arrested. However, these particular guests may later get punished by Disneyland itself, and that is because the park of course frowns at violent behavior from guests, and has even added several rules about tourist behavior on their website. Please show common courtesy both on-site and online. To fellow park guests are cast members, including but not limited to staff and performers and the distinct characters, and do not use profanity or offensive behavior. Another rule states, please respect fellow guests while queuing. Be careful not to bump into and push others in the queue. Guests are not permitted to use personal belongings of any kind, including but not limited to strollers, raincoats, and blankets, etc., to reserve viewing places while waiting for shows. The entire party should wait together. Obviously, some of these rules have been broken, which is why the involved guests in the brawl could lose their access into the park for a limited or even an unlimited period of time. And this penalty is known to all guests through the Disneyland website, where it says, we reserve the right to deny admission to any person or to require a person already admitted to leave the park immediately without refund or compensation for failure to comply with any of the park rules, relevant rules for unsafe, illegal, disruptive, or offensive behavior that causes suspension or attractions of entertainment performances, to ensure safety, security, or order, or if you consider that the circumstances so require. While this crime involved a possible ban, this next case is worse, since it saw a guest go crazy in the most disturbing way.
A man is in custody after trespassing at Disneyland
What
and
the
roaming
fuck?
around naked.
On April 14th, 2025, some Disneyland guests had their dinner at Tiana's place completely ruined when another guest decided to be the main character in the most unsettling way. It was around 10 p.m. that night when the Anaheim police suddenly received a call to help Disneyland security kick out a man we will call Matthew, who was disturbing other guests at the restaurant. But before the police would arrive at the scene, a video of Matthew had started making rounds on the internet, and Matthew can be seen nakedly parading himself around Tiana's place and eventually climbing onto the roof of the restaurant. He also made gestures towards other guests and eventually threatened to check himself out of this world, leaving a little girl terrified and in tears. Which made this even more disturbing was that Disneyland is generally considered a family-friendly theme park that welcomes people of any age. Specifically, Tiana's Palace is known to be one of the places of attraction for kids in the park, and this is because it is a quick-service restaurant modeled after the fictional eatery owned by Princess Tiana in the 2009 animated film, The Princess and the Frog. Now, immediately after the park management learned about Matthew's behavior, they closed the restaurant completely and briefly evacuated the guests from the parks to Orland Square. The park security then forced Matthew to come down from the roof at the restaurant before detaining him inside the park and then calling the police. After the police arrived, they started investigating the case and discovered that Matthew had engaged in substance abuse and that it was the substance that was responsible for his misbehavior. Although his name wasn't disclosed to the public, an Anaheim police spokesperson told CBS that he's
Originium will carve a path for us.
He's a 38-year-old man from Calgary, Alberta, further revealing how grown Matthew actually was. Now, eventually, he was arrested for being under the influence of narcotics, trespassing, and public nudity. But while this was a crazy case for everyone involved, it wasn't the first time Disneyland had a guest ruining other people's experience.
Don't think he's doing something.
The It's a Small World attraction at Disneyland is one of the most loved and most patronized attractions in Disneyland history due to its endearing message of global unity and its large capacity. But on March 25th, 2023, this loved attraction would become a place of a disturbing public spectacle. It all began with guests having fun at the It's a Small World ride, when a man whom we will call Peter suddenly jumped out of one of the attraction boats he was riding it and started displaying erratic behavior. He started by stripping himself naked in the presence of everyone and then proceeded to wade in the water around the park where boats exited the ride. From there, he went on to sit on the ride of the canal as he watched everyone look at him awkwardly. According to one Disneyland guest named Hunter Coast, who posted a video of Peter online, Hunter was in line for the ride with his family. When his aunt directed his attention to the naked man, Hunter generally thought Peter was only being funny, but he soon realized that his behavior could ruin the beautiful experience for children waiting to get on the attraction. And this very concern made adult guests report Peter to Disneyland employees, who immediately stopped the ride and escalated the situation to the park security. Now, they responded, but it still wasn't an easy task to get him off there. According to reports, it took about 45 minutes for 5 security guards and the Anaheim Police Department to have Peter contained. And after he was taken away from the attraction, the police conducted an investigation and determined that just like Matthew, he was also under the influence of a controlled substance. So Peter was then taken to the hospital as a precaution to be sure his condition wouldn't get any worse. And although his real identity
Most of these crimes is under a substance. I realize that now.
was also kept secret, the police stated that he was a 26-year-old man who came to the park just like every other guest and actually had no ill intentions. This, however, didn't stop the police from arresting Peter and charging him with indecent exposure and being under the influence of a controlled substance. And while this case made the ride stop temporarily, this next one caused a massive evacuation since it involved thieves hiding in the park.
Searching for at least 2 suspects after a high-speed chase ended at Disneyland.
In 2000, Disneyland launched the largest parking structure in the US with a capacity of 10,000 cars, and then followed it up with an additional 6,500 space garage in 2019, making visits and parking easy for guests to flock in and out of the park. However, what no one knew was that in just 6 years, this massive structure would become an almost perfect hideout for criminals. On March 24th, 2025, around 7:50 p.m., the Orange County deputies received a report about a stolen vehicle at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel on Pacific Coast Highway. But it wasn't just any vehicle. It was a Camaro ZL1, considered to be one of the coolest cars in the world, with a price tag of about $70,000. After compiling every information they needed about the missing vehicle, the deputies began their search. And in no time, they spotted it speeding at over 100 miles per hour on Interstate 5 through Irvine, California. Immediately, the police initiated a pursuit with cars and a helicopter in the air. And as the chase got more and more intense, the police kept closing in on the stolen vehicle, and it almost seemed like the alleged thieves had nowhere to go. But that was until the driver made a turn that left the officers on the edge of their seats. The driver would flee to Disneyland's 6,500 Pixar Palace parking structure without pausing for a second. And although it wasn't clear how he was able to swiftly drive past the garage attendant without getting stopped, his arrival at the park alerted the Anaheim and California Highway Patrol officers, who instantly took over the chase. The thieves were now somewhere inside the structure, which delayed the whole thing for hours. But by 8 p.m., the thieves decided to abandon the car, and the two then decided to run away on foot. Now, the police actually continued the chase, and the parking structure, entrances, and exits were locked down for a thorough search. Unfortunately, this caused a significant inconvenience to the guests, as many of them would neither access their vehicles nor leave the park. Now, thanks to a TikTok user named Danny McDuck, who made and uploaded a video of the scene on the platform, we were able to see what the park looked like while the investigation was going on. Now, after the search, the 2 alleged thieves were caught, but there was still one more twist to the story, as the 2 suspects turned out to be children so young that the driver was taken to the juvenile hall, while the passenger was released into the custody of a guardian. Thankfully, this case ended with nobody getting injured or killed, but this next one isn't as simple, since it left bloodstains on Disneyland.
What? What?
2023 was a special year for Disney fans, as their favorite entertainment company turned 100 years old. And to celebrate, Disney built and placed a 100th anniversary sign in several Disney World parks to mark the milestone and also to be used as a photo op. Now, this triggered a wave of euphoria among fans who trooped to every Disney park to partake in the celebrations. But at the Magic Kingdom theme park, Walt Disney World Resort, some fans would cross the line, leaving behind horrific stains that would require a massive cover-up from Disney. It happened on May 15, 2023, when a family we will call the Taylors asked another family who we will call the Browns to move move over so they could have a family picture in front of Disney's 100th anniversary sign. But for unknown reasons, the Browns simply didn't want to move, prompting a member of the family to punch one of the Taylors in the face. From there, a serious fight ensued, attracting the attention of other guests in the park, and one of them decided to make a video that shows two families throwing punches at each other, with one man being wrestled to the ground and other family members pulling and shoving each other. The video, which lasted for about 37 seconds, ended with Disney workers and a security officer arriving at the scene to split them up. But by the time the intervention occurred, at least one person had been badly injured, and according to reports, that person was eventually given medical treatment. This was confirmed by a video shared by TikTok user Jay Frosty, showing the aftermath of the brawl. In the clip, Disney custodial teams can be seen spraying and covering what appears to be a huge blood stain on the ground, indicating that at least one member of the two families had lost a lot of blood. Although no arrests were made, two identified people were given a trespass warning, which means that they will never be allowed into the happiest place on earth. But while this brawl only got those involved banned, this next case is even more intense since it involves multiple people getting arrested. Back in 2022, another intense brawl broke out in Magic Kingdom between two sets of families, leading to fans questioning whether the park was ever truly safe for its guests at all. According to reports, the fight ensued between a family wearing matching red and white outfits and another family we will call the Petersons. The two families were having a good time at the park until a member of the Petersons tried to rejoin their family in line for Mickey's PhilharMagic, a 3D musical attraction at Magic Kingdom. Now at first, no one knew what started the actual fight, but later one of the people involved, whom we will call Mike, reached out to a news agency called WDWNT to share the side of his story and submitted additional footage of the brawl, revealing shocking details about the incident. According to Mike, it all started with both the red and white family and the Petersons standing in line for Mickey's PhilharMagic. But then somewhere along the line, a member of the Petersons realized she left her phone in the electric conveyance vehicle and left the line to retrieve it. When she then got back to the queue and tried to join in with her family, the red and white family refused to let her join the line. She'd left, and instead they started pushing and shoving her. And although that wasn't enough of a trigger for a fight, the brawl didn't start until the end of the event they had all attended. After the Petersons exited the theater, they met the red and white family waiting outside, and from their hostile glare, it was obvious that they were waiting to confront the Petersons. Now, in an attempt to de-escalate the situation, one of the Petersons allegedly said to the red and whites, "Listen, man, we don't want trouble. We don't appreciate you guys pushing my younger sister." And while it's not clear how the red and whites responded, the situation quickly went from a normal conversations to a shouting contest. And before anyone knew what was going on, the two families were already locked in a serious altercation. And not long after the brawl started, some bystanders caught it on camera and posted it on different platforms. Most of the uploaded videos lasted about 45 seconds, with no indication that the fight was coming to an end.
Right. How does this got to do with 20 feet?
And no security officers were seen trying to put an end to it. And this very fight made people start questioning the effectiveness of Disney's security system, with concerned guests making different posts emphasizing the need for them to improve their commitment to the safety to the fans. But according to a witness interviewed by Fox 35, she mentioned that security personnel did arrive at the scene when the fight was almost over, saying, "We came upon it, and it appeared as though it took about 2 minutes for two security personnel to arrive. Deputies arrived probably about 5 minutes after that." However, Mike's footage, which is about a minute and a half long, only shows other guests along with two cast members intervening to end the fight, and it was them who eventually broke it up successfully. According to reports, the security officer later came to escort everyone involved in the brawl to separate secure locations where they all gave their statements. But by then, a lot of damage had been done. The Petersons reported having some of their items broken or missing, with one member of their family taken away in an ambulance due to a large laceration on his chin. Other members of both families also suffered cuts and bruises, which were treated in the park. But that didn't stop the authorities from slamming them with appropriate punishments for disturbing the peace. After the deputies conducted their investigation, they found 3 people guilty of misdemeanor battery and arrested them, while Disney banned everyone involved in the fight from visiting the park ever again. But that still wasn't enough, as the company will take it a step further by adding a courtesy drop-down tab on its website under the section that says "Preparing for your visit." This section reads, "See the magic you want to see in the world. You must always remember to treat others with respect, kindness, and compassion. Those who can't live up to the simple wish may be asked to leave Walt Disney World Resort." And although this case ended with arrests, this next one is terrifying. The wish may be asked to leave Walt Disney treat others with respect, kindness, and compassion. This section reads, "See the magic," adding a courtesy drop.
Disney World. Disney World. Disney. And she's still there. For a chat, I'm just trying to find out what's still there. Disney. I'm not checking Disney chat. Disney World. Disney. What is it called? Disney.GoDisney.com. When I don't do the .com, because we do not need to see everything else. Are we sharing this tab? There we are. Alright, okay. Where was it meant to be seen? Down here, isn't it? I did not see anything about it. Maybe because they're off. Maybe. Alright. Just like pretend we're getting tickets, right? French fries. Alright. Oh, Disney. Oh, Disney. Alright, there's no one to show. Oh. Let's scroll slower to see if we have this. Maybe it's just the American one, I guess. Not this. Oh. So what do you say about this?
Drop-down tab on its website under the section that says "Preparing for your visit." This section reads: "See the magic you want to see
They,
in the
they
world.
don't,
You
they
must always
don't have it
remember
on
to
the
treat
website.
others with respect, kindness, and compassion. Those who
I don't-
can live
I
up to
didn't
the
see
simple
it.
wish may be asked to leave Walt Disney World
Oh.
Resort." Although this case ended with arrests, this next one is terrifying since it involves explosions.
The scare at the happiest place on earth. Investigators this morning are trying to find out who set off a small explosion at Disneyland in Anaheim.
What? Whoa. Small ass explosion in Disney, bro. What the fuck? That's not right.
On May 28th, 2013, the day at Disneyland started like any other
2013,
crowded
dog.
summer
I was
afternoon,
like-
with families filling the walkways and music
I don't
drifting through the
know.
air. But within moments, that illusion of perfection was shattered by
I
an
was
unexpected
young.
blast that forced
Yeah.
thousands of guests to evacuate in fear. It all started when a Disney employee named Christian Barnes, who works at a vending cart outside of Toontown, concluded his shift and was going to be relieved by a colleague, whom we will call Harry. When Harry got to the vending cart that Christian had just left, he opened it to check what's left, but suddenly it exploded. While Harry and everyone else around were still trying to figure out what was going on, Christian took a water bottle from what was left of the exploded cart and found his way to the park exit. And before he left, he dropped the bottle in a trash can. Now, several minutes later, a cleaner removed the trash bag from the can and placed it on the floor and left it there to empty another can. But before he got back, the trash bag too had exploded. Although no one was injured in either explosion, they were enough to cause panic to the guests, who described the explosion as a loud boom. And the sound was also loud enough to alert the park officials to shut down Toontown, which is the affected area of the park, for about 3 hours, and decided to contact the police department and the bomb squad. Up until this point, nobody knew what caused these explosions, so it could be a simple prank or an actual attack on Disneyland
Right,
waiting to
my
escalate.
gosh, bro.
To get answers, the officers investigated the case and found out that the explosions were from two dry ice bombs. One was placed in the cart and the other one in the trash bin. Fortunately, it wasn't a serious danger that could have led to any significant loss. And at Disneyland, finding dry ice isn't actually that difficult, as the park uses it a lot for storing food, creating special effects, and outdoor vending carts like the one Christian managed. Also, crude dry ice bombs are actually common in Anaheim, as police have reported sightings multiple times in the city. So this means that the culprit didn't actually have to look far to get what he needed to make the actual bombs. Now, once the police determined the source of the explosions, the next job was to find the criminal behind the bombs. And due to Harry's account detailing how the first explosion occurred and the surveillance footage that showed Christian around the two explosion sites, the officers determined their first suspect. And so on May 29th, 2013, Christian was actually called in for questioning. Now, at this point, it was pretty clear that Christian was behind all of this. But initially, it was unclear if Christian actually intentionally set off the explosion or if it happened by accident. But almost immediately after the interrogation started, he admitted to setting off the two dry ice bombs, and also explained how he used the water bottles to make the bomb.
Well, that's actually so stupid. Like, why would you do that at the most fucking happiest place on earth? Where children go, by the way.
And left them at the sites of explosions, and also explained how he used the water bottles to make the bombs. And as much as most explosions come with serious motives, surprisingly, Christian mentioned that this was just an isolated incident with unexpected impacts, which in other words means it was just a one-time silly thing that he never expected would trigger a full bomb squad response. Now, after this confession,
Bro, excuse me, what the fuck do you mean a full response, bro? The bomb, of course it's gonna fucking send off the bomb squad. This guy really was unbelievable.
Christian was immediately arrested and was charged with a misdemeanor count of possession of a destructive device. This was actually a serious crime that would send Christian to jail for about 6 years. But before he was charged to court, he was held on a $1 million bail while he waited to appear before a judge. Now, Christian's father, Raymond Barnes, seemed to be displeased with how his son's case turned out, as he said in an interview with NBC4 that his son is the best kid anyone could ever ask for because he's never been in trouble and had no criminal record. He also mentioned that the authorities were blowing things way out of proportion, saying, "It's just a little ice."
A little ice. Hot ice, they're making a big deal out of it.
Hot ice.
Raymond Barnes said, I'm sure when the smoke clears, they'll see he's just like any other person.
They're making a big deal out of nothing. I'm sure when the smoke clears, they'll see he's just like any other person. They just made a little mistake. But unfortunately, according to Susie Brown, the director of media relations and external communications for Disneyland, cases like Christian's are taken very seriously. And so Christian may face actual jail time for his actions after all. Now at the time, Christian still didn't know what would happen to him. But before long, Disneyland released a statement about the situation, including an insurance of safety, saying, "Reviews complete. Mickey's Toontown has been deemed all clear by local authorities. Guests are welcome to return." And so on April 3rd, 2013, the attraction center opened normally once again, like nothing happened. And the next day, Christian appeared in Orange County Superior Court and pleaded not guilty to his charges. And there, the prosecutors requested that his bail be reduced to $500,000, which the judge allowed. And afterwards set his bail. Charges. And there, the prosecutors requested that his bail be reduced to $500,000, which the judge allowed. And afterwards set his bail hearing for June 13, 2013. Now, after the bail hearing, the judge first lowered Christian's bail to $50,000, and then ordered his release on the same day, stating that he believed Christian had no malicious intent. And so, on November 4th, 2013, Christian would plead guilty to his charges and was immediately sentenced to 36 hours in jail, 3 years of informal probation.
36 hours? Right. 36 hours of jail, 3 years of probation, and 100 hours of... Bro, you won't be a fuck.
And 100 hours of community service and a lifetime ban from Disneyland property. While this incident caused a few hours of panic within Disneyland, this next case is much worse, since it involves a violent offender and a smaller human.
Was booked over the weekend for what was supposed to be a genuine wedding ceremony, but Disneyland staff and security called police when they noticed the so-called bride wearing a wedding dress was too young.
We're gonna pause that there. Excuse me. What the fuck am I just hearing? What the fuck did I just hear? Where'd the most people go?
Disneyland Paris is not just Europe's most visited theme park, but also one of the most popular venues for beautiful beginnings. But without realizing it, the park once made a terrible decision of hosting a wedding that will only be remembered for horror. This story takes us to June 21st, 2025, when Disneyland Paris opened its gates to a group, his bride, orchestra, a giant cake, and 100 guests in attendance before the opening hours. The ceremony kickstarted like every other wedding, until something really disturbing would catch the attention of some staff. The employee monitoring the events suddenly noticed the wedding had a very unusual type of couple, which included an adult groom and a small human as a bride. This led to the staff learning to...
Please tell me it's like... not a child. Please tell me it's not a fucking child. It's just a small person.
Police, who came to put an end to the wedding immediately. Now, the police decided to arrest the group, the bride's biological mother, a 55-year-old Latvian man hired to be the bride's father, and a 24-year-old Latvian woman hired to be the bride's sister. And after the arrest, the police began investigating the situation and found out that the bride was in fact a smaller human, who we will call Natalia. Now, more disturbingly, they also discovered that the groom had actually arranged a staged wedding by hiring Natalia to act as his bride and every other person in attendance. But the 100 paid extras thought they were attending a real wedding. Now, this was a very weird situation, but because the groom was the sole organizer of the event and had left everyone else ignorant of his plans, he was charged with fraud, breach of trust, money laundering, and identity theft. As for the other people involved, they were eventually let go by the authorities. And while every other charge is pretty self-explanatory, the groom was charged with money laundering because hiring Disneyland Paris for a wedding before the opening hours cost up to $153,000, which shows that he must have spent a lot of money to pull off the fake wedding. Also, the identity theft was a result of the groom fooling Disneyland by telling them that the wedding ceremony was real, taking things even further by booking the park with a fake Latvian identity. And on top of that, on the morning of the wedding, he used makeup to change his face, so as to look entirely different from himself. Fortunately, Natalia was not harmed both physically and intimately. But still staging a wedding with a person that wasn't of age is very weird. And it wasn't just Disneyland staff who found it strange, as one of the hired people. Then through the window, I saw a small human that was not of age with a wedding dress on. A woman was carrying her in her arms. That's when I understood that the bride was really young. But while the investigators thought nothing else could be more shocking than the bride's age, they soon discovered that the groom was a well-known British intimately violent offender named Juskan Jash, popularly known as
And I hope justice goes to that motherfucker. That's just weird.
Jackie Josh. And the
Why
French
did-
investigators found about Jackie's past records through the BBC, which had previously published investigations into. And although the police and prosecutors didn't immediately name him, the BBC soon realized another article about him, stating that back in 2016, Jackie was found guilty of being intimately inappropriate with 2 female small humans in the United Kingdom after he lured them with alcohol while claiming to be a Hollywood film producer. And after he successfully lied to these innocent victims, he exploited them and even went ahead to filming the intimate moment without their consent. He then uploaded this video on a now deleted YouTube channel that stayed up for 4 years. One of the victim's family members said to BBC that it is very unfair for YouTube to allow such a video to stay up for that long, considering that the video destroyed the victim's life. Now for this crime, Jackie was arrested and would eventually be sentenced to 4 years in prison. And after serving his jail time, he would be released in 2020. Now in 2025, the French judicial authorities were notified of Jackie's previous convictions, but his rap sheet was even longer than they initially thought, as it would turn out he'd also been listed as a wanted man for breaching a harm prevention order and a breach of an intimate violent offenders register notification requirement by the Metropolitan Police in London. This was because after Jackie's release in 2020, he was placed under supervision by the London police. But even though he was under constant watch and his movement was restricted, somehow Jackie managed to pull off another massive stunt in London several years later. On October 17th, 2023,
Let's look in let's look at the whole segment. It's just in this little park. I got uncomfortable. Oh yeah. It's just a different park.
auditions for another production. This parent recognized him immediately and reported him to the police, prompting his immediate arrest. However, Jackie was soon again released, since his offense was considered
I mean, you don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. I'm just saying. Okay. Okay.
Although his confession part was redacted, according to an arrest statement, we know that George admitted that he's been taking videos of dresses/skirts of unknown females in the Disney World theme park.
And so I'm different happy.
Privacy, and more, seeking at least $50,000 in settlement. Now, up until this video was made, the lawsuit remained active, with no indication of settlement or dismissal, and George is still yet unpunished for his crimes. And while it's not common for cases like this to stay pending for a long time, the next case is much worse, since it sent the whole country into a state of great fear.
We just had some kind of explosion downtown.
What is this?
On April 12, 1995, a padded envelope labeled videotape with no return address arrived on the desk of the Disneyland executive secretary. At first, it seemed harmless, until curiosity led her to play the video, revealing a message that would set off a nationwide panic. The 8-minute and 51-second video opened with an anonymous person behind the camera, filming a newspaper from the Orange County Register with the date April 1st, 1995 on it. The particular report filmed was headlined, "Man Charged with Spraying Irritant in Disneyland," and it detailed an incident that happened in the month where a 21-year-old man allegedly released a harmful substance in the Space Mountain ride that made about 33 people sick instantly. The caption on the videotape in relation to the news article says, "Good boy," and the camera soon moved to a table of old black and white photographs of unknown people, captioned "Dead Guest," before the screen went blank. Immediately, the words "Nerf gas" and "Made Easy" appeared, and the next thing we see is what looked like a temporary and low-quality chemical lab. On the table was a pair of tongs, an aluminum pot, and bottles of liquid, and a clock on the table was pointing to number 9, with a date underneath that reads April 14th, 1995, which was 2 days after the arrival of the tape at Disneyland. A glove hand then eventually started to work with the chemicals, and eventually pulled out small glass pots of a pink substance and another colorless substance. Next thing that appeared on the screen was a refrigerator. It had a yellow container of antifreeze and other unknown items wrapped in tinfoil. Towards the end of the video is a shot that was filmed from a motel across the street from Disneyland, close to where the parking lot used to be. And once again, the words "Dead Guest" appeared on the screen before the video went blank. At the end of the video, a Spanish TV show from 1988, Camera Infraganti, played, and it made the whole video seem like it originally contained the TV show, which the anonymous person recorded on. Now, this content immediately sent chills down the secretary's spine and prompted her to immediately remove the tape, all while being careful to ensure any potential fingerprints were preserved. The secretary then took the tape to the security manager, who then informed the higher authorities. Immediately, the FBI, Anaheim police officers, Orange County bomb squad, and public health officials were deployed into the park in anticipation of a possible attack.
You, just you, building your app on Base 44.
And what followed was a tightening sense of fear as everyone involved braced themselves for the uncertainty ahead. Now, the officers involved were all given chemical warfare gear, including gas masks from stockpiles off the marine base at El Toro, showing the magnitude of the situation. And from the moment the officers were in position, the security at the park was tight, as everybody was thoroughly searched who went in during the period. Now, being an Easter weekend, it was one of Disney's busiest weeks, with a lot of guests and attendance, which at the same time seemed like the perfect time for perpetrators to penetrate into the park by blending in with the crowd. Now, the tension was intense around that time, not only because of the videotape itself, but also because 3 weeks before the tape arrived at Disneyland, a Japanese cult known as Aum Shinrikyo cult unleashed a lethal nerve agent called sarin on commuters in Tokyo. This attack sent 13 people out of this world, and as a result made law enforcement around the world be more careful. Now, while the news of this attack generated a widespread panic, now some sources capitalized on it by spreading rumors that the Tokyo police said that the 2 men associated with the cult had flown to Los Angeles shortly before Easter, and the same sources also claimed that both men were arrested upon arrival in LA, but no one actually knew their whereabouts at the time Disneyland received the threats. But the rumors would do more damage than good to the public. The FBI debunked the story, but never commented about the reason for deploying the officers and bomb squad to Disneyland. And of course, the guests didn't know about the VHS tape, which simply left the public unconvinced that the cult members weren't roaming around freely in the United States. To worsen the situation, a Japanese National Police Agency official also declined any comment concerning 2 Japanese men who were reportedly questioned at the Los Angeles airport. Now, another reason for the internal panic of the Disney company was the result of Disney receiving bomb threats because of a movie the company released around the same time, named Priest. The Catholic organization was really pissed about the movie and protested against it because it featured a homosexual priest. But while Disneyland was packed with the US military troops and guests roamed around the park wondering why the security was tightened, danger loomed in another part of the country, and what happened next was far more tragic than anything imagined.
Oh god.
We just had some kind of explosion downtown.
Now, 5 days actually passed after April 14th, the supposed date of the attack, so all was good until now. But instead, the city of Oklahoma witnessed a domestic terrorist attack when a massive truck bomb detonated outside of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma. And the attack sent 168 people out of this world and injured another 680. And on the same day, an anti-government extremist, Timothy McVeigh, was arrested, convicted, and later executed, whilst accomplice Terry Nichols was sentenced to life in prison. And while President Bill Clinton was addressing the attack, he also hinted at the videotape threat, saying, "There was one recent incident with which I was intimately familiar, which involved a quick and a secret deployment of a major United States effort of FBI and FEMA and Public Health Service and Army personnel. We went to the place and we were ready. We were ready to try to prevent it. And if it occurred, we were ready to respond." And while the president never explicitly mentioned Disneyland, the White House would actually later confirm that he was referring to the park threat. Now, after this press conference, the authorities decided to keep the details of the incident under wraps, so the general public still wasn't sure what to believe. However, on April 22nd, 1995, the FBI finally announced that the VHS threat was a hoax, since nothing happened on April 14th, which was the targeted date, and even 8 days later, the situation remained the same. The announcement finally marked the end of this potential threat. Now, until now, the public actually never saw the actual VHS tape recordings, and the mysteries around this would only grow stronger as days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and months turned into years, with nobody knowing what exactly was said in these tapes. And eventually, those looking for answers started to lose interest as time went on. But in 2019, this exact videotape would come to life once again after a VHS collector named Todd Verhoeven stumbled upon it while looking through a Goodwill thrift store in Portland, Oregon. Todd generally collects old videos that have been lost to time and posts them on his YouTube channel named Dr. RP VHS. And as soon as he found this video and watched it, he knew he had found something different from his usual finds. He then wrote in the video description, "Of all the haunted VHS tapes I've ever found, this one is the most haunted." And Todd then asked the online investigators to help him solve the mystery. In the video, the name Jerry Hill was written on the tape, together with the printed label 199MNY252958. And once again, this discovery sparked curiosity among those who knew about the hoax, with the new generation joining the train of intrigue. And more than the question of what happened decades ago, were other questions like, who is Jerry Hill? Why did he have the tape? And what do the numbers mean written on it? And before long, the internet, specifically a channel named Barely Sociable, were able to provide some answers, including the first 3 digits. 199 likely being an FBI classification known as Foreign Counterintelligence Terrorism, while NY suggested the case was handled by the New York field office. And it was later revealed that the location was one of the reasons the authorities didn't take the threat lightly. And this was because the Japanese cult had a base in New York City, which of course made the FBI believe that this tape might have ties to the group. As for the name on the tape, it belongs to a former FBI agent named Jerry Hill, who worked in the Portland area. According to Jerry Hill's relative, who spoke to news outlets, Jerry used to work on terrorism cases, which explains why it was possible for him to have his name on it. But by 2017, Jerry died, and the tape ended up at a Goodwill store. And while no one visits Disneyland with the fear of explosions, this next case made the guest experience extremely traumatic.
A wild brawl breaks out inside Disney Concert Hall Thursday evening during a graduation ceremony.
When it comes to graduation ceremonies, they usually begin with a lot of excitement and end in the same way. But on June 13, 2024, what started as a celebration at the Walt Disney Concert Hall ended in the most horrifying way. This wasn't a regular graduation ceremony, but a program known as Operation Graduation, which is a collaborative ceremony organized by the Los Angeles County Probation Department and the Los Angeles County Office of Education. It celebrates high school students who've earned their diploma in juvenile detention, probation camps, and community schools. The ceremony was organized for over 100 Los Angeles County high school graduates, including more than 2 dozen youths who are on probation. And the actual graduation ceremony began on a good note, as expected, with the detained probation youth being closely watched and eventually escorted out of the auditorium. They were then placed in a secure holding area after their program had been concluded. But things were just about to take a dark turn. While the ceremony was coming to an end, someone from the audience suddenly jumped over a second-story balcony at the concert venue and attacked a community graduate. Instantly, things got even worse when someone else leaped off the stage into a group of people, resulting in a massive brawl. And Brianna Valdez, one of the graduating students who just climbed the stage when the fight started, expressed her shock in an interview, stating how intense the fight actually was.
Really scary. They were all jumping. They got on top of each other and they fell off of the stage.
Now, before the situation would get even worse, the security personnel at the venue contained it, and eventually no serious injuries were reported. But while everyone tried to catch a break and return to their homes, another fight broke out inside the concert hall, and this time it involved a firearm. According to witnesses Raul Valdez and Javonte Jameson, the second fight started just as suddenly as the first one, but with multiple gunshots being fired, leaving everyone scared to death.
Coming out of the ceremonies, and there was a car right on the other side of the cars that were parked, and we just saw shooting, and then saw the smoke and everything, and everybody just got down.
Once again, law enforcement reacted swiftly to the situation and had 4 people arrested, bringing peace to the chaotic situation. And although the report stated that the fight was between students from different communities, some witnesses believed it all happened for a different reason.
It's like we're here for a happy moment and it's just ruined with gang activity.
Despite the rapid shootings, no life was actually lost. But the same can't be said about the next case, since it involves someone losing their life in the most unusual way.
Well, you know those terms and conditions many of us agree to without even reading them? Disney is trying to use them to fend off a wrongful death lawsuit.
Yep.
On October 5th, 2023, Jeffrey Piccolo had dinner with his wife, Dr. Kenneth Porn Tang Swan, and his mother, Jackie Piccolo, at Disney Springs, after which the three went their separate ways. Now, approximately 45 minutes later, Jeffrey would receive a disturbing call, stating his wife had just collapsed and died from food allergy. Jeffrey couldn't believe his ears, not only because his wife was young and healthy, but because he was sure about an hour ago that they wouldn't be having any food allergy issues. That was because Jeffrey and his family carefully and intentionally chose the Ranglan Road Irish Pub restaurant because they believed the restaurant, and especially Disney, wouldn't be careless about food allergies. For context, Disney is known as one of the most allergy-safe places to visit, at least since 2015, when Disneyland and Walt Disney World Resorts introduced allergy-friendly menus. And fast forward to 2017, Disney would even get recognition from the Food Allergy Research and Education Group as an industry leader in providing safe, quality dining experiences to guests with allergies and special diets. And this is even boldly stated on the Disney website Food Blog for anyone who wants to actually read it. This was really important to Jeffrey and his family, and it in a way influenced their choice of restaurant because Canuck Porn was highly allergic to dairy and nuts. This means that one wrong ingredient, without them knowing, could very well mean chronic pain or even worse, death for Canuck Porn. Now, once they settled in, they informed the waiter about her allergy, and he assured all of them that they would prepare dishes that are safe for her. And so they ordered a vegan fritter, scallops, onion rings, and a vegan shepherd's pie. Now, when the server actually returned with the food, some of the items didn't actually have the allergen-free flags in them, which made Jeffrey and Canuck Porn question the waiter again about the allergens, to which he responded with an assurance that the food was safe. And after assuring them again and again, the three decided to eat their food and went their separate ways after. Jeffrey took the leftover food to their room, while his mom and Canuck Porn went out to shop. Now outside, Canuck Porn and Jackie actually decided to shop separately, and as soon as Jackie was done shopping, she called Canuck Porn on the phone to know if she was done as well, but Canuck Porn wasn't actually responding, and so Jackie thought that she had simply headed to the hotel, so Jackie decided to do the same. But when she got to the room, Canuck Porn was nowhere to be found, and so Jackie called her again, and this time it was answered, but not by Canuck Porn herself, but by a stranger who told Jackie that her daughter-in-law had just slumped at the store and had been taken to the hospital. Jackie and Jeffrey would then rush to the hospital, where the witnesses who followed Canuck Porn told them that she suddenly began to have difficulty breathing and eventually collapsed. According to the observers, Canuck Porn actually self-administered an EpiPen before one of them called 911. But unfortunately, after a period of waiting, Jeffrey and Jackie met the doctor in charge, who told them that Canuck Porn had died. According to them, her death was a result of a severe and fast-acting allergic reaction due to the elevated levels of dairy and nuts in her system. This news, of course, made Jeffrey was shocked because of the conversation he and his family had with the waiters who served them at the Raglan Road.
Right, they should do more. Where is it? Disneyland should do more of figuring out if it is the allergy-free one, because that's so stupid how the person died.
old Irish pub. And so Jeffrey decided to file a lawsuit against the restaurant and Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, accusing both of negligence. Raglan for preparing the food improperly, and Disney for failing to train their employees to make sure they prepare allergen-free food when requested. Now, initially, Disney actually argued that the restaurant is neither owned nor operated by the company, saying in their email statement that they're defending the company against any attempt to include them in a lawsuit meant to be solely against Raglan, because in reality, Raglan Road is not owned and operated by Disney, but by the Great Irish Pubs Florida Incorporated. However, Jeffrey's attorney countered that the lease agreement between the parties is in part evidence of Disney's right of control over the actions of Raglan Road, and with that, Disney was still forced to remain in the case. But this is when Disney decided to pull out their ace card. On May 31st, 2024, Disney attorneys devised another means to dismiss Jeffrey's lawsuit, and this time they chose to dig up the terms and conditions he agreed to when signing up for the Disney Plus streaming service in 2019. According to Disney, Jeffrey created a Disney Plus account on his PlayStation and agreed to the terms of use that states users agree to settle any disputes with the company out of court via arbitration. And the company also claimed that 2019 wasn't the only time Jeffrey agreed to such a contract, but also in 2023 when he bought Disney Plus theme park tickets using his Disney account. And Jeffrey's attorneys actually confirmed that truly Jeffrey did create a Disney Plus account in 2019, but he actually canceled the subscription during the trial and never used it afterwards. They then responded to Disney's claims, saying that it is wrong to actually state that a person who signs up for a 1-month free trial without expanding beyond the trial period will have to waive the right to a jury trial forever, and instead will agree to arbitrage any dispute against Disney and its affiliates. In addition to that, Jeffrey's lawyers also argued that Jeffrey agreed to these terms on behalf of himself and not his wife, whom the lawsuit was actually about. Now, when it became public that Disney was trying to use this tactic as a get-out-of-jail card, they faced a ton of backlash, with different tweets and posts, like the one from a user named Evan Loves Words, saying, "Remember that a woman died in Disney World, and Disney argued in the wrongful death lawsuit that they weren't liable because her husband had signed up for Disney Plus. They're an evil company." And another user said, "The tragic death at Disney World due to a food allergy shows it's evident that Disney does not prioritize guest safety." Now, they're reportedly using Disney Plus terms of service as a legal loophole to dismiss the lawsuit. This negligence is unacceptable. It's time we hold Disney accountable and demand they take real actions to protect their guests. No more excuses. And besides the call out tweets, some YouTubers also made videos about the situation, condemning Disney. One of them was Penguin Z, who said this concerning the situation.
"I've said for years now, one of the most evil companies on the planet is Disney. I imagine the board of directors is a who's who of supervillains. You probably got Mickey Mouse right next to Lucifer in that seat. It is always shocking to see just how low they'll stoop for the sake of a couple extra doubloons."
Now, it soon became a widespread issue, and Disney knew that their reputation was totally on the line. And so to salvage the situation, the company filed a notice to withdraw the motion in an email to the Associated Press saying, "At Disney, we strive to put humanity above all other considerations. With such unique circumstances as the one in this case, we believe the situation warrants a sensitive approach to expedite a resolution for the family who've experienced such a painful loss." Now, currently, the case is still ongoing, with no guarantee that this will actually end soon. Now, this was a disturbing and unexpected end to a person's life, but it's nothing compared to the next case, since it involves a person's life ending mysteriously. It's late June 1974, a time Disneyland was exceptionally buzzing with people for its recently debuted variety show known as America Sings. Unknown to anyone at the time though, just 1 week later, this same show that brought smiles to thousands of faces would end up taking the life of an employee in the most disturbing way. That employee was 18-year-old Deborah Gale Stone, the first child of Bill and Marilyn Stone. Deborah was described as an athletic and smart kid who graduated from Santa Ana High School in the top 10 percentile of her class. After graduation, she then enrolled at Iowa State University with so much excitement and enthusiasm for her future. However, what Deborah truly needed was far more than her inbuilt abilities and euphoria. She needed money to live through college, since she was far away from home. And being a teenager, Deborah of course only had her gaze fixated on the coolest place any person would want to work at, and that place was Disneyland. Now, once Disneyland started taking applications for summer jobs, Deborah and her friends decided to apply, hoping they would be selected. And surprisingly, Deborah actually got the job she desired, and so in no time, she was already functioning in one of the most exciting spots. Now, Disneyland had just debuted the animated variety show known as America Sings.
Yankee Doodle travel south, riding on a riverboat. Played a tune and sang it out. It sounded like...
It was a show that paid tribute to America's musical history and performed it by rotating the theater where guests sat around a central stage in 6 steps to the second ride. Altogether, the show lasted 24 minutes and featured 4 acts, each of which was a medley of tunes performed by audio animatronic animals. Now, unlike many other rides in the park where Disney workers only stayed behind the scenes, certain rides required someone beautiful and smart enough to welcome patrons before the start of the show and bid them goodbye after the theater had completely rotated around the 6 musical scenes. And so for American Sings, Deborah, a pretty young and upbeat woman, seems like the ideal cast member. And so she mastered her job as the show hostess. And on July 8th, she was placed on the evening shift. But before the show could actually start, Deborah had something else to be excited about. Her boyfriend had just proposed to her earlier that day. And so she called her parents to ask if it was okay to get married. Now, according to her parents, they were happy for her, which means they gave her their blessings. After the positive response, Deborah went ahead to do her job. And the show began like every other of its kind. But its end came with a tragic twist. Around 10:30 p.m., the guests had just experienced the last musical scene, and the stage was moving into the position to begin a new cycle, when one of the guests, Daniel Robinson, and saw what looked like a little child, was being pulled between the moving walls. And once the stage stopped moving, the guests informed the operators to rush to the scene, only to be met with a gruesome sight. Somehow, the two passing walls had crushed Deborah to death, leaving her remains almost unidentifiable. Now, why Deborah was between those walls has stayed a mystery for over 5 decades, with loads of speculations and myths being passed down from one generation to another. While some believe Deborah's hair might have been caught in the moving walls, other hosts of the show had claimed that it wasn't unusual for staff to playfully hop from one wall to another. But in Deborah's case, no one ever saw her doing that on the night of the incident. Now, to Deborah's family, the right safety features weren't enough, and so they filed a lawsuit against Disney. And during the course of the investigation of the case, it was revealed that American Sings had a dangerous flaw, which could have made it easy to become a victim of the moving walls. According to reports, the American Sings Theater was initially used for Carousel of Progress, which was a rotating theater show about the history of American technological progress. Now, the difference between those two shows is that the Carousel of Progress was a rotating theater, while American Sings was a stationary theater with rotating stages. So in other words, Carousel of Progress rotated in a clockwise direction, in a way that allowed the center stage to rotate without the walls colliding, while American Sings rotated in an anti-clockwise way, which means that the walls would clash, as the center rotated while moving guests from one stage to another. Now, eventually Disney settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, which Deborah's parents called a small settlement. Now, according to reports, the company added safety lights that would alert someone if they were getting too close to the danger area, ensuring the safety of other employees, until the eventual shutdown of the show in April 1988. And while no one witnessed how Deborah lost her life, the next case is more troubling since it involves a guest sending another one out of this world in the most brutal way.
Disneyland was about to witness a dark incident that would shake its image and expose serious flaws in its safety system.
Why did his voice turn AI?
For the first time in its 26-year history, someone lost their life inside the park.
Long before 1981, Disneyland had launched a grad night program that brings every Southern California high school senior together to celebrate their graduation. This event is one of the reasons Disneyland had a lot of teenagers in the park on March 7, 1981. However, at the same time, the Roar Corp, a defense and aerospace firm, was also hosting a private after-hours party for their employees and their families at Disneyland. One of the attendees was 18-year-old Mel Christian Yorba, whose father, Edward Joseph Yorba, was an employee at Roar Corp before his death in 1978. While Mel and his friends were having fun around the park, he crossed paths with 28-year-old James O'Driscoll, who was there with his girlfriend, Julie Holdener, at the Tomorrowland section. Now suddenly, for whatever reason, Julie told James that Mel had either pinched or fondled her unprovoked. And this got James really mad that he had to confront Mel about it, and from there the situation turned into a scuffle. And during this fight, Mel and his friends later managed to run away, but James just simply wasn't satisfied with them. According to Julie, she told James to let go of the situation, but James instead ran after Mel and his friends. He got a hold of Mel again and continued to fight it, but before anyone could stop them, James actually pulled out an 8.5-inch knife and stabbed Mel in the chest. As expected, Mel started bleeding profusely, leading the security.
How does Disney allow you to stick that in, dog? Like, no, that's possible.
Guards off the park to rush to his aid. And that moment it dawned on James that he'd landed himself in serious trouble, and so he decided to flee the scene. He first paused at the Sleeping Beauty castle to toss the knife he used into the moat and proceeded to hide his blood-soaked shirt in a women's restroom and trash can. And from there, James ran to the Adventure Railroad, where he curled up in a fetal position to hide himself. Now, at first, the intention was actually divided. While some officers were looking for James, some had their attention on the dying Mel, who was unconscious from bleeding so heavily. The security guards called a nurse employed by Disneyland named Elizabeth Miko for intervention, but instead of actually giving him first aid and calling an ambulance, Elizabeth suggested that Mel be taken out of the park to a hospital immediately. And so Mel, who'd already bled for about 20 minutes, was then taken into a park van without any first aid kit and driven to the hospital. And it took actually 10 minutes to locate one named Palm Harbor. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived, Mel already bled out and was pronounced dead on arrival. Now, while all of this was going on, the officers who stayed at Disneyland kept looking for James and eventually found and arrested him. And Julie, who was not reported to be in hiding, was also arrested. However, the next day, she was then released without getting charged due to lack of evidence. James, on the other hand, was charged charged with taking a life, to which he pleaded not guilty. On April 13, 1981, while James awaited trial, Mel Yorba's family would file a lawsuit against Disneyland, seeking $60 million in damage. According to the family lawyer, John Luedo, the suit was not intended to punish the amusement park, but to ensure that a similar incident would not be handled the same way in the future. And by handled the same way, Mel's family meant that Mel's death, although was from a stab wounds, would have been avoided if the park called 911 or an ambulance to take him to the hospital right away. Mel's stepfather, Clarence Reynolds, and his mother, Ellen Reynolds, claimed that Disneyland had a policy of not calling paramedics and ambulances onto park property, and that municipal police or security agencies aren't actually allowed in the park. According to Mel's attorney, if an ambulance was called to transport Mel, paramedics would have given him blood and oxygen, placed him in a pressurized unit to stabilize his heart, and have been in contact with a trauma doctor who would have guided them on what to do more, hence saving his life. In addition, the lawsuit also claimed that Disneyland didn't allow paramedics on its property because it would tarnish the park's perfect image, which was actually confirmed by the nurse Elizabeth Micko, who testified that she decided to take Mel to a hospital herself because of an unwritten policy to not call paramedics into the park. John Luedo also criticized Disneyland security guards for not preventing the fight between Mel and James, and for not discovering that James actually had a knife on him right from the beginning. Disneyland, however, denied these allegations, contending that emergency services in the park were adequate enough. Now, eventually, the jury found Disneyland negligent in Mel's treatment and was ordered to pay $600,000 to the family of Mel. And although the lawsuit ended with a settlement, Mel's, or in this case now James's case, was far from over. It would drag on for another 2 years as James's attorney, Olson, argued that Mel had been drinking heavily and accidentally threw himself on the knife while attacking James. And although Olson agreed that James was found with Mel's blood all over him, he argued that James never actually attacked Mel, saying whatever happened after the fight was unclear. But despite that, after the whole back and forth, James was eventually given a 16-year to life sentence for taking the life of Mel Yorba. And although this lawsuit didn't reverse the damage, it helped prevent future problems like this.
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope tech from Wix.
Anything GTA? Yeah, shit. Check. Yeah. And after that, so future, let's play. Peace.